increase of productivity that is supposed to increase the competitiveness of our company in an increasingly connected world and in a greater amount of data. So the idea is to rethink the idea of a company starting from manufacture. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Welcome to you all, and welcome to this joint meeting between Assolombarda and Confindustria Belluno. Here at Mido, we're going to talk about the factory of the future, and I would like to call Madame Lorraine Berton and Carlo Bonomi to the podium to spend a couple of words as an introduction to these topics, which is very exciting but also very complicated for a company and for an entrepreneur. I'd like to hand over to you, Ms. Berton. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to greet you on behalf of Confindustria Belluno Dolomiti at the beginning of this meeting, organized together with our friends from Assolombarda, whom I would like to thank. It is a pleasure for us to be present for the second year in a row at Mido with a joint stand. We represent two areas that are far away from each other and very different from each other, but they have very strong links, and with a view to the future, these links will become even stronger, especially if the candidature for the Olympic Games will be successful, as we all wish. These relationships will go beyond this challenge. We have important companies based in both regions, but most of all, we would like to share a vision with the mountain on the one hand and the city on the other, not as two separate worlds, but working in synergy with each other. The manifesto for the setup of Confindustria per la Montagna, promoted by our association, clearly expresses this concept. Mountains can have new potential developments only if they are able to build with metropolitan areas, and we've selected the right one, a collaboration and contamination relationship. Only by doing so, we will be able to reverse the prejudice according to which urban spaces are the cradle of innovation and dynamism. Instead, peripheral regions are considered as the cradle of tradition, of obsolescence, and these are all areas that are mostly used to consume and exploit natural resources, but without any manufacturing potential. Companies, instead, are the backbone of both economic and social systems. The factory of the future shall be potential development both for cities and the mountains. In this respect, it is paramount to develop a strategy to re-establish the balance between these two regions. And to do so, we need moments like this, and we need greater interconnections. Well, the challenge of technologies and the environmental challenges are the ones that can be tackled together at best. In this respect, I would like to greet students from ITIS Belluno. They're young and they are our future. Thank you very much. Thank you. Carlo Bonomi. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I also would like to greet our young students, and I was just talking to your teacher, and he told me that after this meeting you will go to Corso Como to have a bit of fun, so it will be much more interesting to you. However, being here at Mido, we are in the factory of the future, and this is very important for you. Well, we usually look into the future by using the lenses of the past, but I think we have to give a new interpretation of the future by focusing on new technologies in combination with the typical Italian tradition and craftsmanship. And you, as young adults, are the link between these two worlds, retaining that industry that allowed us to become the second greatest manufacturing power in Europe and the fifth worldwide. And for this reason, it is very important to be here today with you and with Confindustria Belluno Dolomiti, because this really enshrines the willingness to set up a system well, creating systems is something which is hardly done in Italy, but thanks to Lorraine, we've managed to achieve a great progress, especially also the candidature for the Olympic Games Milano Cortina 2026. This is a very important project. We had Expo in Milan, and I can tell you, Expo really revolutionized the city. Expo was an anti-cyclical moment. Back then, New Times dubbed Milan as Milan Cinderella because we were in a very bad shape, in a very bad situation. But things have changed. And as for Milan Cortina, if we can all work together, this will certainly drive the development of both regions, because competition is no longer played international, but among regions. And being able to set up the partnership between a city and the mountains, well, this will certainly allow both territories to reach great success. Thank you to you both. So, now let's call our speakers and our guests who will talk about the factory of the future. In Hewlett-Packard since 2002, he was member of the committee that set up the RFID lab. So he is now the manager of IoT Industry 4.0 country manager and enterprise account manager. Sergio Crippa, Industry 4.0 country manager of HP Italy. Thank you very much. And then, so daily committed to supporting the companies in reviewing their business through in-source components. He has collected great international experience in the field of IoT, thanks to his past experience at BA System and Oracle. Nino Guarnaci, Cloud Solution Engineer of Salesforce. Thank you, Nino. Last but not least, mechanical engineer and installation engineer with a deep knowledge of marketing strategies, also thanks to his experience in Breda, Pavese, De Ricant, Autogrill, Selenia, and so on and so forth, Selenia, Finmeccanica, etc. Today, adjunct professor of the Lewis Business School in Rome for management of technologies and innovation, Leonardo Quattrocchi. My name, as you can see, is Pepe Moder. I'm a journalist in Radio 24, and I also teach at the Business School of Sole 24 Ore and the Business School of Bergamo. So, well, Pepe is my name and Moder is my surname. Well, let's say my mother and my father did not give me an easy name, but if you agree, I'd like to warm up a little bit the audience because we're talking about the factory of the future. And Price, PricewaterhouseCoopers, said in one of his studies that in a matter of a few years, companies in Europe are supposed to increase their productivity by 20% against huge costs. So 1.3 billion euros are needed in order to achieve this productivity increase. Well, Sergio Crippa, a question to you first. The transformation which is going on right now in this epoch in the manufacturing world is driven by many innovative technologies, and we know that the government lists 11 such technologies in its agenda. So the most disruptive ones are robotics and additive manufacturing. Just a couple of words on both. And they are both enabled by IoT. How does the organization in companies change? Well, first of all, good afternoon and thank you. Well, you mentioned a very important concept, productivity first. And I think productivity is based on three factors, and out of these three, one is new. One factor are human resources, are people. So education is really key, and today a school is represented here. Then secondly, we have technology. And the third element that drives production, and that's the new one, is data, so the use of data. We are training people, we are educating people. Technologies are being introduced into companies. You mentioned robotics and additive manufacturing, and they are both driven by data, enabled by data. Why are these technologies so important? Well, let's take a concrete example. If we consider the production of a lens or of a pair of glasses, the possibility to mimic, to simulate the production of that object in a predictive fashion, if I can see that the temple of that pair of glasses, thanks to the chemical composition that was used in that factory, does not perform in compliance with the expectations, and that's quality in the production line, well, this allows me to anticipate any costs issues that I will incur, that I will have in terms of quality assurance and optimization of production. To do so, I have to introduce additive manufacturing, allowing me to perform prototyping, both physically or virtually, and so this compared to the original design can allow me to reshape production, to review and adjust my production, thus reducing waste and thus optimizing the performance of my production facility. But all this is enabled by data, but I will talk about this later. Thank you very much. Nino, Industry 4.0. But are we talking about evolution or innovation or even discontinuity? Well, in a country like Italy, it is impossible to talk about innovation. So we should talk about evolution. So why should we focus on evolution rather than revolution? Well, you know, because at this point in time, fear has an impact on the decision-making process. I see that many entrepreneurs can hardly make decisions because any changes generate pain. We know this from history. Every time we have to change, well, that change is usually painful. And, we made many surveys. We surveyed 237 companies, and we identified that the best approach is an evolutionary approach. We used a very simple experiment. We took a quadrant, a matrix. Well, and in this matrix, you show the process and you see how difficult it is to change that process. In a chart, you can locate the different use cases on which you should focus in order to allow the process evolution. You usually pick the most visible processes in a company with the lowest impact. Well, to go back to what my colleague said, within the framework of additive manufacturing, especially in eyewear, there are different use cases, different models that can be implemented. One of these that is borrowed from the household appliance sector is the long tail part. So the possibility to show all the and to manufacture all the different types of eyeglasses that have been manufactured through time and have it printed externally. But let's talk about the supply chain. This digital transformation, how is it impacting on the supply chain? In this case, in eyewear. So what do you think about that? What is your view on that? Well, digital transformation is changing the supply chain radically. In some cases, some steps are eliminated, so from the supplier to the end user, for example. So how can you keep control of the supply chain as a company? As Sergio said before, it is important to increase production capacity and to in-source production again. So it's an inshoring of production, because now labor costs have decreased here too, and in so doing you can also protect intellectual property, which is really key. All technologies enabled by Industry 4.0 and by all the relevant devices within the framework of Industry 4.0 are really key for eyewear. 3D printing, for example. 3D printing can drastically change some pre-requirements. You may adapt the frame to the lens and not the other way around, thus revolutionizing the manufacturing process. So you may adapt the frame to the face. There are some facial recognition technologies that are quite widespread right now that allow to customize to the very finest detail a pair of glasses you may wear. And the possibility to do this live or remotely is already a reality. There are many companies doing so right now, and the industry has to realize that. Otherwise, they will be defeated by platform managers or whatever. A question to you both. The supply chain is becoming an enabler for many companies. Companies that used to have a traditional value chain, but now have implemented a sort of direct-to-consumer approach. So they basically sell to the final user without any intermediaries. In your opinion, the fact that the supply chain available in Italy, well, how can the Italian supply chain, is the Italian supply chain really competitive? And if not, what can be done in order to make it competitive? Because abroad, we have very strong partners, but they do not always pursue the interests of our domestic companies. Well, as far as this topic is concerned, I have my personal view. Because in my opinion, there are two types of supply chains, a physical one and a digital one. And by digital supply chain, I mean data. As I said before, well, today, if I read the financial statements of a company, I see assets, that is human resources and machinery, but I never see under assets the item data. Data is never considered, but data is the very raw material of our present and future time on which we can really build new business models. The supply chain, and by that I mean the transfer of a good from me to my neighbor, because we may be part of the same productive process, may also occur digitally, because besides a physical product, I may have a digital product moving together, and through a digital product, those coming after me can analyze what happened in the previous step of the production process up to the very end customer. So the data and the ability to collect all data being generated within a company in every single step of the manufacturing process is a real tool that can really change gear, that really change the process and enable new revenue streams. But companies are usually very confused and they don't know how to make use of the data. What about your experience in making use of data? First of all, where can this data be collected within a company, and what is the value of it? On a daily basis, Facebook collects about 10 billion likes per day. So how much is the value of a like? Basically nil. Except for the person, for the relevant person. So the value of these likes is the forecast that allows, so let's say, to foresee where Italians are going on holiday this year. But this is the result of the analysis of billions of data through specific approaches like augmented analytics. Augmented analytics makes use of artificial intelligence applied on a static picture. Static picture is made up of the data that we collect within a company through IT systems, and augmented analytics allow us to make projections. What happens if I project this data into the future? So the streams of data that I collect come partly from new technologies, but entrepreneurs and companies may already have plenty of data to resort to, so you don't need to digitalize the full process to collect data. And by the way, most of the value of this data derives from the contamination among this data. The key is really creating a synergy between internal and external data. As my colleague said, well, data is certainly the oil of tomorrow, as many people say, but the real value of it is that piece of information, that insight that you can generate through this type of mechanism. Thank you, Nino Leonardo. So, well, with this data, let's try and find an example in the manufacturing world. Where do we find this data within the production department? Because many entrepreneurs wonder whether they really have this data, and if yes, where is it? Based on recent research, 60% of the companies of the data that a company owns are not used properly. A car company, for example, had to try and reduce its stocks, and so the number of car models, engine types, colors, etc. And they were about to entrust an external company with that task. But then someone in the company said, we already have this with this data. These are in the configuration app that we have in the internet, because our customers go there and choose the color they have, choose the engine they want. So let's try and eliminate all the variants and that customers do not want. And by doing so, they managed to decrease by 20% the management costs of the supply chain, the stocks, and they reduced their car models drastically. This is also applicable to eyewear, because if we are able to combine information coming from production, retail, distribution, and if we really use this data to identify customer intentions, and this is what we can obtain from data. So we have to obtain insights and useful data from useful information from data, then we can really be successful. Once data is collected, how is it used and how is it organized within the company? Well, first you have to identify how much data you have, and you expect you have plenty of it. Yes, well, this is not banal, because, you know, big data means that there's plenty of data available. An example, let's assume you want to collect the data about the functioning of an engine of a machine, so that you can perform a predictive analysis to see whether this engine can break down or whether it is working properly. If we just take the engine operating temperature, every time we read that value, well, we are uploading 64 bytes. How often do we read that temperature? Well, in a factory, every 100 or 200 milliseconds for every reading. So if you multiply 200 milliseconds times 64 bytes, well, you obtain the number of data for temperature. Then we have rotation, dust, humidity. And this means that in a year, from one single engine, we can collect even 20 terabytes, so from one single engine. But how many engines are there in a company? Hundreds of them. And so this is really overwhelming. And how do I put all this data? First of all, I have to keep it as near as possible to the point where it is obtained, because if I want to get an insight, I have to be close to the relevant point, and so I have to have a technological infrastructure located on the edge, which is the source of data. The factory itself, data is not to be stored in a data center. It has to be in a factory. It has to be collected there. But who manages this data? Is it done in-house or outside of the company? Are there any special skills? And so all companies, even small-sized companies, have to have a data scientist who's in charge of collecting, assessing, interpreting data, and setting up a plan of action. It's an open question. Well, if I answer that question, I will be very critical. Well, let me be critical. You don't have to start from technology to achieve the Industry 4.0 concept. You have to start from processes, from ideas and use cases. In terms of skills in a factory, you have to consider that education, the culture of education is a prerequisite. The culture of education is a prerequisite. Otherwise, there will always be a gap. If you look at IT companies, there is always a training department there because digital technologies progress at a very quick pace. So how can you find skills in the field of technologies if technologies become obsolete very quickly? So they're not industrial technologies, but that's the main mistake. Well, you need a data scientist, but maybe you also need a data psychologist. Data psychologists are those creating a contamination between data, between the psyche and the data, in order to develop marketing initiatives that are even closer to the end user. But basically, it's not a question of having skills in-house. It's a question of changing the way a company is managed. The most important enabler is the culture of education in a company. You have to skill the resources of your factory, and then I may tell you where data is going to be. Leonardo.
For sure, this is the most important thing. Processes and people, data, like Sergio said, are even too many, and sometimes it's difficult to extrapolate information from too many data. You have so many data, and things we can do well now are trying to extrapolate information from the right type of data. And this is complex, and companies should learn to do it. You do it starting from so many things. And something interesting. Thinking about glasses as something we always wear. I'm short-sighted, so I can't do without them. Just like the cell phone, it becomes a platform. Why don't we exploit them? It's something we always have with us. And you might put a satellite system to give my location, or a system that allows me to communicate with my company in real time without getting to IT. Eyeglasses or something trivial. I always lose my eyeglasses. Why don't we put an RFID sensor into the temples of my eyeglasses? So eyeglasses can be added with features that can help people see better if you have visual problems, or, for example, installers that might need to analyze an engine with the infrared light, and so that I can see infrared, or that allows people to record what they are seeing to analyze it after. So eyeglasses can become a platform and attract other industries and other needs. This is done by so many, and very often not even having a platform. Think about Uber. It has no cars, it has no drivers. We spoke about it last week in the radio. And with Sergio, I'd like to stress Sergio's point of view, because actually today also creativity should be driven by data. And one of the partners of Automatic, one of the new and important consultancies in the digital world, he speaks about computational design, creativity driven by data. And now, if the factory of the future should be driven by data, and how much should we invest? And how much does it cost to invest to collect, systematize, and use such data? And how important is it to take into the account the problem of security of such data, and how much it costs? It's not an easy question. Yes, but you're wondering, the audience is wondering, but I like to see things from a different perspective. What happens if I don't do it? And the digital and 4.0 is not an option today. It's not something that you may decide whether to do it or not. I have my company, and for example, I've been doing things for 50 years. Why do you keep on saying that I should invest money? It's so peculiar. In the previous conference, I saw the presentation of a new progressive lens, and the company, I don't even remember the name, that introduced the lens, said, why do we need to introduce a new progressive lens today when we've been doing progressive lenses for 20 years now? He started like this, and they gave an answer. There's a need to introduce a new progressive lens because our lens was designed not in mechanical terms, but it was designed by analyzing data and behavior of people using this lens, because today the fact that somebody is more or less digital, and a 30-year-old guy that is more digital than a senior lady of 60 years of age, he uses his body and vision in a different way. He always uses the cell phone. He always analyzing behavioral data of people. By analyzing them, I have designed a different lens thanks to the fact that I studied behavioral data. And if I don't do that, I don't generate product innovation, and not generating product innovation, I lag behind because somebody else does it. And when somebody else does it, I don't recover. In the case of the digital, you just have one Amazon. Those that come after Amazon, they lag behind. With regard to the security of such data, it's a cultural issue. Because security, you may think, okay, I have a firewall, I have protection, perimeter protection of my company, nobody attacks me and steals my data, okay. But that's not the problem when I have 4.0, because when I have 4.0, the real problem is that I'm connecting all the machines to change the production process. I've connected all the machines, okay, all the companies automated. It's good but also problematic, because for a single element, if a single element of the chain goes down, all the production goes down. And so what should I do? As I have digitalized every individual machine, every individual process, I must introduce some technologies that analyze the behavior of all the connected objects, because if a connected object behaves badly, if a video camera that records takes images not just once a minute but once a second and fires data in the network, the factory's network goes down, and so you should then identify the video camera that caused the problem. And it's difficult. When I connect everything, security becomes cyber security inside the production process. It's something more, and it's something that culturally we do not consider, because we protect ourselves from the outside, not from the inside culturally, and it should be changed. Thanks a lot, Sergio. Nino, robots. Can I add something? Yes, sure. It's a theme we have tackled in the book. It was highly appreciated, where the idea was to understand what was happening in the fabric of Italian SMEs. And as a result of the survey, 80% of the companies that were interviewed adopted 4.0 industry solutions for cybersecurity. They installed an antivirus as a result. That's what came from that survey. And to add something to what Sergio said, we should start conceiving cybersecurity, or at least security for Italian factories, as a competitive factor for the product, a competitive factor for the service. It's an add-on. When you buy something, you buy it, and in the instructions, one of the features that is sold is a security-related aspect, reliability. It's a piece that adds value to the warranty of the product or of the service. If I buy some food, for example, ironically, and in the label, if they mention some additional security value element, it's a value. And cybersecurity adds value, and it should be conceived as a competitive edge. That's what I wanted to add. So, not a cost, but an opportunity to increase the value of my asset, an asset. Nino, yes. A step forward. So IoT enables a set of factors inside a company, a set of new technologies. For example, robots. Robots, up until yesterday, we're used to seeing robots. The line of production of Fiat, you have such robots moving sheets of metal, bending them, no human beings. And robots today cooperate with man, and they speak about cobot, not robot, collaborative robots. And on the other hand, however, there's a question mark. Entrepreneur side, but also skilled labor side. How many jobs will we lose, and how many jobs will be created? I don't ask you the exact figure, but what I ask you is what happens, and which are the skills to face this change, which is a necessary change, or rather, it's an instrument, it's a way to increase competitiveness or keep production in Italy. I'd like to reply with the title of a chapter of the book. We should buy the book. Let's give it a name. It's called Digital Unemployment. Digital unemployment is the term to embody this fear of the technological world. Actually, there's no digital unemployment, there's digital specialization. And if you look back at other industrial revolutions, they were catalysts for new jobs. And the reason why Fourth Revolution might be a disaster, the reason doesn't exist. And we're following the model of a small factory. In the past, I had a giant factory kilometers and kilometers away with huge warehouses where I stocked all of the same product that I tried to position on the market with the same marketing technique. Now I'm trying to make the factory smaller, having plenty of them near consumers and mass customization, following trends without having big warehouses. It's a catalyst for jobs. It's easy. It's a catalyst for jobs. Now, resistance to change, the concept I used before, generates pain, and especially in those entrepreneurs that you talked about before. When you said, who cares, everything works so well. Yes, but there are many other companies that are suffering, and usually you're not at the start. You have a gunshot and you start. Somebody has already started, and they will create the path when the path was not there. What we expect is that more and more companies follow that path. We should simply create the lights, Sergio, and we as well, basically. Sergio probably is the most active inside the system, but it's those that build the lit path so that it can be easy for companies, enterprises, when they are suffering. Or it's those companies that from far away say, oh, such a big wave, it's wonderful, big wave. Leonardo, in this world where business models are dramatically changing, we've seen some technologies. We've spoken about robots, additive manufacturing, and simplified in 3D printing. We've talked about IoT as an enabler, but which other technologies in the world of the industry and of eyewear can be competitive drivers, and in which small and medium-sized enterprises might invest and build new business models? First of all, be connected to other needs of man, and there's a study done in Harvard, and the Anglo-Saxon world is highly pragmatic. It's called the theory of the job to be done. When I go to Brickhofer to buy a 6mm drill, what I want is a hole with a 6mm diameter. If I had a laser that creates some hole, it would be perfect. So going back to the needs of people, why do people want to wear eyeglasses? Because they want to see, well, if we can understand and identify some sort of service. I don't sell you eyeglasses, but I provide you the service of seeing well. For example, when I drive, when I go sailing, when I consider virtual reality, and for example, or when a worker needs eyeglasses or needs to project on the visor of the helmet the instructions for that machine. So I don't sell the product by itself, but I sell a service, and who better than you working in the industry can do such a thing? And joining so many needs in a single object that is so common. We all wear eyeglasses, and to speak about advanced technologies, yesterday I read that in Korean university researchers developed a contact lens that contains microcircuit that is self-fed, that can measure glucose in the tear of the eye, measurement of people's diabetes, not just having the typical test, but transmitting in real-time data to your physician. This is just one example of the many things you can do. Something we always use, eyeglasses, contact lenses. Leonardo, I as an entrepreneur, where should I start from? Should I buy a book? And yes, that's a very good starting point. But then, starting from understanding such technologies and what they can do, and unleashing imagination, innovation. Very often what they do in companies is to set up an innovation team, people from different cultures joining together, and people with different type of culture might say, what are they doing? Are they wasting time? But out of a certain number of ideas, 2 of them will make the company change face. That's what we should aim at. From my personal experience, we've done it in some companies. Results and passion of people, and the yield is higher. In your experience as a professor, we spoke about training, and in terms of training of students, and whereby they can give an immediate contribution to the factory of the future, what should be done? Yes, we have basic culture, but we need, especially in technical institutions, some training so that students may be used immediately by companies when they end their course. And also use of technologies and for example, something we are testing at the moment to have a European syllabus for mechatronics, and having the possibility to train students in a technical secondary school that can immediately be integrated in the labor market. It's something difficult. It's complex, also because it's not easy to do it in schools, but you must do it, otherwise you lag behind. Thanks a lot, Leonardo. To conclude, one very last brief question to each one of our 3 speakers. And it's an out-of-the-box question. From your perspective, what's the winning technology for the factory of the future in the world of eyeglasses, eyewear, and where would you put your chip? Who wants to start? Undoubtedly, the product, because from the product, engineering changes, production process changes, cultures change, because managing the digital on board of the product means having to redefine all the competencies in the construction of the product itself, and the product is a key element upon which a company thrives. Nino, services. I usually say the opposite. Services, and I would make serviceable whatever is around the company, and starting from a nice technology, micro-learning. All the entrepreneurs in the head office immediately, all the entrepreneurs present here immediately after the company Google this term micro-learning and what it means to apply it in a company. Okay, I would change the theme, and I would say the business model. In trying to meet the expectations of clients today, and we are well accustomed, and Amazon provides us with products each day, and for example, instead we use the cell phone to take pictures and not the video camera, and you cannot take beautiful pictures with the cell phone. There's something wrong, but that's how customers are accustomed to taking pictures. You should educate customers and giving them what they need in the right moment, applying virtual reality in wearing glasses, and a possibility to give a product in almost real time, and e-commerce, or buying a product in a store. Buy online and purchase in the store. You buy online and then physically you go to a store so that you can wear eyeglasses, and trying to define a business model that can fight against things that can harm a market, just like plastics eyeglasses sold at the supermarket for presbyopia, or companies that sell eyeglasses because they sell 3 pairs of glasses. They provide you with 3 pairs of eyeglasses, and the two that are not good, you send them back with logistical costs at low prices. How can they do it? Because they have big numbers and because perhaps our expectations are lower. We should increase our expectations and we should provide a top quality service. That's very good. We have little time before closing. It's almost time before closing. If there are questions from the floor. That's very good. We end here. We thank Sergio Crippa, IoT Industry 4.0 Country Manager, HP Italy, Nino Guarnacci, Salesforce Platform, and Leonardo Quattrocchi, Adjunct Professor, Luis Business School, Rome. Thanks a lot.